Internist here told me, he says, the problems with surgeons is they're addicted to surgery. When I was doing robotic surgery, I'm sitting on a robot, I got the camera there, I've got medical students, residents, fellows, nurses, and they're all cheering you. It would never be Michael Jordan, Tom Brady. Yeah. That dude ruined his marriage. I see this here. Surgeons won't retire because nothing else gives them meaning. Nothing gives them that drug effect, like being in the theater. This is the theater that we get to be in.
Today, I'm honored to welcome two-time national champion Dr. John Alverdy, a world-renowned surgeon and scientist who has transformed our understanding of the gut microbiome and its critical role in surgery and overall health. Dr. Alverdy is the Sarah and Harold Lincoln Thompson Professor of Surgery at the University of Chicago and a pioneer in the field of surgical infection control. His groundbreaking work has changed the way we approach post-operative care, helping to reduce complications and improve patient outcomes.
And imagine having a hip replacement. It gets infected, now you can't walk. Or maybe a back surgery, you're like, well, only 5% of people get infections after back surgery. 5%, well, yeah. Huh, dude, that's 5 out of 100 that can't walk.
For his remarkable achievements, he has been awarded the 2024 American Surgical Association Medallion for Scientific Achievement. The American Surgical Association was founded in 1880. It's the nation's oldest and most prestigious surgical organization. Its members include the nation's most prominent surgeons from the country's leading academic medical institutions. For that remarkable honor, we are thrilled to welcome Dr. John Alverdy.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you again for taking the time out. You said once that you think surgery is a little overrated. Maybe that's not the words I want to put out like that. You feel like everyone can do surgery. It's really hard to get to the place where you're getting to do surgery, right? That's the main point you're making. It's really hard to get to the place where they allow you to do surgery. But once you get there, it's like, well, I've had much harder things along this path than the surgery itself. Maybe you can distill the mythology, the magic, and pull back the veil of surgery. You're a remarkable surgeon in your own right. Also a scientist, which we need to talk about. But yeah, maybe you can just peel that back and get people to thinking about how they can actually, do surgery.
Yeah, I like to use the analogy of an airplane pilot. When you look in the cockpit when you fly whatever commercial airlines you fly, and you're like, man, there are a lot of dials in there. You got to know what you're doing. But not everybody can be a pilot, right? I mean, you've got to probably take a bunch of tests and go through school. It's probably competitive. Otherwise, they'd let anybody do it. You've got to be a serious person because you're responsible for all these lives. You have to know a lot about probably mechanical or some kind of engineering, electrical engineering or something. And you probably have to be good at math, so there's some science behind it. So I'm not diminishing that person's role. What I'm saying is, if you talk to a pilot who's, let's say, 50 years old, they'd say, well, I could do this in my sleep. It's not that hard. Or surgeons who trained me would say to me, we'd do a really complicated case. And they'd go, I could teach a monkey to do this. Well, yeah, because you've been doing it so long. It's like secondhand to you. So it's not hard to be a pilot or maybe to be a surgeon in a specialty, but it's hard to get to be a pilot, and it's hard to get to be a surgeon. In other words, at least for us, we filter the entry point based on achievement in school, standardized tests, all these other things, to get to go to the best schools and the best training programs. Yet at the end of the day, it's a manual task, right?
Yeah.
It's a learned apprentice-like manual task. And yes, you have to be good at science. You have to know all that, but it's very different. And the public, the layperson, wants to go to the best surgeon with the best training, who is doing this the most and does this all the time and is the best at it. No question about that. I do too, if I need surgery. Um, but at the same time, what that's hard for them to understand is it's a repetitive manual task. And I think that scares a lot of people at the beginning. Like we know we don't have enough um, people applying to medical school that are of a diverse background. And we're like, how do we get them to come? Well, it's kind of creepy. I can remember as a medical student when I first saw an operation, probably like looking in the cockpit of a plane. I'm like, holy smokes, how does this person remember which drain to put in and, all the anatomy and stuff? And then you're in it for 10 years going, this just isn't that hard.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But,
I mean,
but
so,
yes, it takes some training and some diligence and some
yeah.
discipline to get there. No, I'm not diminishing that. I don't want to sound like, oh, anybody could do this. It's just not everybody is allowed to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of barriers to getting there, and those are perhaps harder than the job itself. And that
That's
makes
the
a lot
point.
of sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
that's
makes a lot of sense. There's but what are the most what's the most difficult surgery you've ever done? I mean, I'm sure there are ones that last. We hear about surgeries that go for 10 hours,
yeah.
and they're this crazy. Oh my God, the threat of a needle. If you miss this, it's like, what's the game where you do this and then it blows up on you? There's a game and you put all the pieces together, but if you miss a spot, I think it blows up on you.
Yeah,
Um,
I would say that, everything is becoming a team sport these days, as you know, in your own field. You need technology, you need producers, you need a lot of things to make a show palatable to the audience that you're interested in. And to the same extent that's happening, like let's say, I don't do this kind of surgery, but let's take a transplant surgery where somebody gets on an airplane, picks up a heart or a liver, brings it back to the surgeons who have taken the old diseased organ out and are ready to put the new one in. That's a whole team sport. I mean,
yeah,
from the technology to putting it on the pump to how it's frozen, how it's transported, the planes, the coordination. I mean, you can't do that alone. You've got
right.
to have somebody from the other hospital where the donor is calling the transplant center where the recipient is, coordinating all this. That's called a research coordinator or an organ transplant coordinator. That's a person
Yeah,
that's doing that. And I'm sure some technology is used. There's a whole grading system for whether that organ is acceptable. Do you accept this organ? Well, tell me about the patient, blah, blah, blah. No, we don't want that organ, or yes, we'll take it. And then there's got to be, there is a governance around, um, who gets the organs and in what order. So you don't just have rich people with a lot of money saying, I want a heart, and
yeah,
bump everybody off that list. They try to make it as fair and just as possible. And so that's not something you think, well, that the person that's putting that organ in, he or she is the most important person in the world. Well, yes, but think of all it takes to get there.
yeah, yeah.
So when you think about a 10-hour surgery where, let's say, somebody's separating twins,
Oh, whoa,
or doing something really complicated, and you're
that's
thinking like it's
crazy. Yeah,
12 hours. It's a team of people in there, nurses, doctors, perfusionists, you know, um, people coming and going. Nobody stands there, honestly, for 20 hours. People go to the bathroom and they eat, and other people come in and go, and residents and fellows, and it's a team sport. And
yeah,
that's why, in my humble opinion, and of course I'm at a university medical center, the future of having surgery is going to be less and less going to the mom and pop shop, just like you go to Costco. It's going to be
mm,
more and more like going to the big house, where university teams of people, where teams of people are there to accept you. And I see that in Chicago, like, Northwestern, the University of Chicago, Rush Medical Center, Loyola's Medical Center. They are big teams of people that intake patients and care for them from the beginning to the end. And
Got it.
so
So that's going to be the future.
I think
More and more so is what it's trending towards.
yeah, you got to be careful predicting the future because it can be dangerous.
Well, I will say you, I mean, I don't know if you predicted the future, but you were certainly onto a trend way before it was part of the zeitgeist, the general, the gut microbiome is like, I mean, that's a big part of the collective and, collective psyche, right? The collective unconscious. It's people start to know that word. They kick it around. Oh, my gut. It used to be, oh, my gut feeling. Now it's my gut microbiome. And you got to think about how the gut matches the brain. All this stuff started coming up. But you were doing this before it was trendy, I guess back in the 90s. Maybe
Yeah.
you can talk about how you not predicted that future, but got on that path and knew perhaps of its importance or how it came to be such a big part of your life.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that toss. That's a softball.
Yeah, a little alley oop,
Yeah, there you go.
But now you got to windmill dunk it though. You can't just lay it up,
Well, when I was training, and I trained in Chicago at the Michael Reese Hospital in the University of Chicago, I had a patient who kept getting horrible infections. He was a trauma patient, and we had operated on him several times, and he kept getting complications, and they were infection-related complications. And I kept thinking to myself, well, these germs have to be coming from somewhere. And, you always presume it's coming from the hospital. Or the hospital dropped that bug in there. Or, when a patient gets an infection after surgery, you think, oh, that hospital was negligent in some way. Doctor didn't wash his hands. The instruments were dirty. It actually turns out today it's not the case. It's mostly your own bugs that you bring in. Nobody gets an operation that's healthy. I mean, nobody undergoes major 10-hour surgery because they're perfectly healthy. They got a problem.
Something's going on.
Yeah. And this is now called the exposome. You've heard of the microbiome and the genome. This is the exposome. Everything you've been exposed to your whole life.
Oh my goodness.
From when you were in your mom's uterus and what she was exposed to and transferred to you. When you were first born, what kind of environment were you born into? What did you eat? Were you breastfed? Were you bottle fed? When you were 5 and 10 years old, what did you eat? What air did you breathe? What kind of water did you drink? And so now we're talking about, whoa, this is getting complicated. And now we want to boil this down to, I got a blood test to tell you if you got Alzheimer's disease. And you're thinking to yourself, this dude's 70 years old and he's like getting a blood test. I mean, like, isn't it all about, the genes that you were born with and the gene expression patterns, how those genes are turned on and off throughout your life by different things, the air that you breathe, the water that you drink, the food that you eat, the company that you keep.
Yeah. So that those expressions are capturing such a wide collection of this exposome.
Exposome, exactly. And so, there's a lot of interest in this now because, we see healthcare disparities among different populations of people that we're worried about, and we want to make it equal, but we're all different and we're all grown up in different environments. And everybody's got Uncle Jimmy who smoked and drank his whole life and died at age 90. And we're like, well, I got Uncle Jimmy, but we're talking about averages here.
Right.
And it gets complicated. So I just became interested in all this because I said, there's got to be something, infection after surgery is a major plague. It's still not solved. It's much less than it was at the turn of the century, but still people get infected and their lives are ruined. I mean, imagine having a hip replacement. It gets infected. Now you can't walk. Or maybe a back surgery. You're like, well, only 5% of people get back surgery, get infections after back surgery. 5%. Well, yeah. Huh, dude. That's 5 out of 100 that can't walk.
Oh my
Or are in
goodness,
chronic. They're in chronic pain, Or
Yeah.
maybe they got screws and appliances that have to come out and stuff. I mean, it's not, we think, oh, well, yeah, but 95 of them are fine. They had back surgery and they're fine. And that's true.
Yeah.
So it's good. But how do we go from 5% to zero? And you're like, because nobody should really suffer that. Like when we get on an airplane, we're expecting to go up and down. We don't want to hear about the motherboard and quantum electrodynamics and airflow and turbulence. We just want to get on that plane and get to wherever we're going and land safely. Yeah. And the same with surgery. And so for those of us in the field, we have to start understanding maybe the exposome of the patient before we move on. And part of that exposome maybe lies in their microbiome. So I wrote this paper recently. I don't know if I sent it to you. It's called Social Determinants of Health, the Microbiome and Outcome from Surgery, from traumatic surgery. And the answer is very simple. Social determinants of health. Do you smoke? Are you overweight? Do you eat well? What do you eat? What's in your household? Social determinants of health.
Yeah.
And everything goes through your microbiome because that's the first pass. And then how does that affect your outcome? So, and I looked at this patient of mine and I'm like, this dude, something's up with this guy that he keeps getting infected. And he ended up dying of a serious blood infection of probably from his own microbiome. And so one way to think of the microbiome is to just say it's another gene pool, another set of circumstances, another set of parameters that we must account for when we're thinking about getting people through a major operation.
Yeah.
So that's how my interest became. It was basically like, I'm listening to surgeons saying, do this, do that, use this suture, use that. I'm like, that's great. And the best surgeons in the world have complications, the best ones. None of them get to be my age and go, I've never had a complication. It never happens. And so was it them or was it the patient? What was it about the patient? Well, it's their genes. It's in their genes. Well, yeah, it's one compartment. But there are other genes in the body, all the microbes on your body, which apparently are as many as the genes in our body. So it's just, I don't want you to think of it as some magic. It's just another thing to account for.
Yeah. In the process for surgery to
if we want to
reduce
understand
bacteria.
our health, if we want to understand our health, we have to understand more than just a blood test with our genes.
Yes, it's time to get to the future. We talked about the future earlier. It's definitely time to get to that. I mean, even in precision health, where you're starting to, it's not just, well, did your mom smoke? Did your dad smoke? We can go right to genetics and get far beyond something like that, to understand what's really going on. What genes turned on? Do you have the precursor to this thing that's going to cause you breast cancer 100% in 10 years? We already know it's going to happen. There's no signs of it on a mammogram or whatever, but we know that this gene is activated, so it's time. And then you do that and you have much more preventive power,
But the other thing to keep in mind, especially for your generation, is we're seeing colon cancer really rise among young people between the ages of 20 and 40.
Wow,
and it's disturbing.
That is,
and the answer seems to be diet, and the food that goes in changes your microbiome, and so there are microbiome changes associated with these early cancers, and is it lifestyle? So remember, we progress through, we got vaccines, we got antibiotics, we got trauma centers, we can give people blood, we can do operations safely. How come COVID shot up? Well, what the hell was that? That came out of nowhere. And now what? Colon cancer in young people? What the hell happened? Well, we got to think of health holistically.
Yeah. Colon cancer in people 20 to 40 rising and shooting up is, very, very concerning. And you think it's primarily diet? There's something new that, younger people are eating too much of, or just the Western diet overall is. I heard you talk about how you brought mice in and you couldn't do a certain thing because they were on a Western diet, but it took like 2 days of not being on the Western diet for you to open up the door to be able to do what you're able to do? Maybe you can fill in the blanks there for me.
No, you got it right. So we noticed that mice eat mouse chow. So let me break down what mouse chow is. This is what mice eat. It's meatless, high fiber, no fat, low carbohydrates, low sugar. I'm like, dude, I don't know a human, including myself, that eats mouse chow. Yet all the cancer trials and all the trials, all the drug trials are on these mice that eat a diet that none of us eat. And then you starting to look at younger people that are getting these colon cancers, and they're on highly processed foods. And, look, let's think back to like 1850. There was no refrigeration, or I don't know, nothing to go on. And none of the food was processed. You had to cook it, right? And or have it, or do something to the meat or whatever, or kill an animal to eat that day. And now everything. I mean, I'm glad. I had a yogurt this morning, and all the food is processed, right? Cereal's processed, the food's processed. For my lunch I have a Cliff Bar. You're gonna have to delete that out because that might be too proprietary. But
Yeah. They need to just give us some money. That's right. We're gonna hit up Cliff Bar after and say, hey, what's going on here? What's going on?
And it's got goodies in it, high fiber, good some protein in there, but it's packaged, it's sterile.
Yeah.
And the foods that people eat, out there, our food is not sterile. Our food is not processed. The food that we ate 100 years ago was not sterile. It was not processed. It was not ultra processed for sure. And now it is. Even baby formula is sterile, chemically defined, and fiber free. Is that what a baby should be eating?
And now I'm sure breast milk is a little different.
Breast milk is better. Everybody pushes breast milk. And you have to think, how did you feed your babies 150 years ago? Breast milk. Oh, that's why the breasts are there? Yeah.
All right.
Exactly. It's like, but we have formula now. And so it's, I don't want to demonize industry, but right? Industry makes money off, you probably don't know this because you're too young, but in 1980, the WHO had to stop one of the major pharmaceutical companies from trying to infiltrate South America with their infant formulas because babies were dying.
Wow.
They're like, don't breastfeed. You want to go to work? You got 3 jobs, this, that, and the other. How about this? Formula instead of breastfeeding. Well, it turns out that those babies in those maybe dirtier environments, or maybe where the water wasn't so clean and they're mixing the formulas, they had some bad outcomes. And the World Health Organization had to say to these people, stop marketing directly to the patients.
Yeah.
Because you're knocking them off.
Wow. That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
It is. It's not shocking given the long history of the pharmaceutical industry and their outcomes. And so how do you balance that, as a surgeon, scientist, professor? Obviously you got the Cliff Bar. We'll say it again just so we can, reiterate it. I need my money, Cliff. Okay. And so, but
Dr. Alverdy's eating a Cliff Bar. It's got to be good. But he said it on national TV.
Even you have the Cliff Bar, or how do you balance that? The nefarious history, nature, current ways of the of the industry, the pharmaceutical industry, given that you work, in medicine and health.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So here's what's hot in gastrointestinal surgery, which is what I do, is to try to invoke or try to have a patient do what's called dietary prehabilitation. Now, imagine you need surgery, but, it's not emergent. It's a cataract or a hip replacement or, getting your gallbladder removed, which you've had a problem for a year or two, and it needs to come out. Are there things you could do to improve your health to make you a better candidate for surgery? In other words, decrease your chances of having a complication. And the answer is yes. 1, you can stop smoking. 2, you could lose some weight. 3, you could change your diet. Get off your diabetes medicines. Maybe you lose some weight. Maybe eat more high fiber foods, more less processed, more unprocessed foods. Maybe you could in the week or 2 interim. So you brought up that mouse study, and what we showed in that mouse study was it took only, to your point, 2 days to flip your microbiome back into shape.
Wow.
So if it took 2 days, could you do this in a week or 2 before you have your cataracts or your hip or whatever, your back, whatever horrible thing you're facing? But we're fighting that battle against who? I got something better for you. What's that? Take an antibiotic. Take 3 antibiotics. Why is that? Because I sell antibiotics. Or there's a company, I don't want to, again, demonize anybody, but there's a company that makes a drink called something surgical. Like, drink this. I'm like, dude, that's like processed, chemically defined, sterile, fiber-free. How's that? Well, it's got protein in it. Well, you think you know better than nature what should be done for this patient? Well, it's got zinc in this and all this other stuff. I'm like, and so when you look at additives versus just, eating properly and trying to maintain your health and reduce your exposome. So let's say you live in a house where somebody smokes. You don't smoke, but you get a lot of secondhand smoke. Move out of there for a couple weeks beforehand. Let's say you're 30, 40 pounds overweight. Okay, let's try to get that down. Let's say you have diabetes. Okay, let's try to correct that beforehand. Prehabilitate your body.
Wow.
Let's say for breakfast you eat 2 eggs, bacon, and white toast. And for lunch you eat, I don't know, processed meats. And for dinner you eat, meatloaf, gravy, and mashed potatoes. Let's switch that around just for a couple of weeks. And there's this cool thing.
What would you have them eat instead?
I would probably have them eat for breakfast a high grain, meal, like oatmeal or grits or something like that, which has some grains in it and some fiber, low fat, healthy. And for lunch, maybe a salad. And for dinner, maybe something without meat, something with beans and garbanzos and falafels or something that's not fried, and just do that for 2 weeks. And there's this cool thing in the microbiome called ecological memory. That is that your microbiome, there are hidden secrets in there. Maybe at some day, this is futuristic, we could say to measure your I have somebody here working on that. I'm going to take a piece of your poop. I'm going to analyze it and say, you're not in good shape. Let's put you on this diet for a couple of weeks and remeasure it. Okay, you're good now because you're making these metabolites. Your immune system loves it. Your genes love this stuff. It's now spilling into your bloodstream. It's making you healthier. You're in good shape now. Go have your surgery. So we call that readiness for surgery. Is there a microbiome test that can determine your readiness for surgery? And the answer is there is, but it's work in progress.
Yeah. And that's how you basically reduce all those complications. Like, that's the big breakthrough, is that it wasn't these, world-renowned surgeons who didn't wash their hands. Like, it's not, okay, maybe you could get away with saying that for, some percentage of these. But after so much evidence, it's like, it's no way that it's the surgeons time and time again. Oh, this surgery thing, or this step in the process, or you didn't tie a thing right or cut a thing right. I don't know all the stuff,
No, you're hitting the right notes. That's exactly right. You go to a world-renowned surgeon who's done thousands of these procedures, and you, unfortunately, are the 1 in 100 that develops a serious complication. And the surgeon throws his hands up and says, well, I've worked at the Massachusetts, I don't want to name a hospital, but I worked at man's greatest hospital. That's called the MGH, Massachusetts General Hospital. We all call it MGH, man's greatest hospital, because it's a very prestigious hospital
Yeah.
and a great hospital with great surgeons. But they have complications like we do. And so
Hmm.
you say, I went there and I picked my surgeon specifically, and I ended up with these terrible complications. Well, you know, and I know patients that have gone to many great hospitals and had great surgeons operate them and have had bad outcomes. And they end up coming to me, to try to solve their problem. And you think to yourself, it's beyond, human error there.
Yeah.
It's something in nature, just like when COVID hit, just like, people are predicting, and I hope they're wrong, that the next wave of complications are going to be, you start seeing really bad, serious, hard to treat infections after surgery, after elective surgery, when everything seems to have gone right.
Mhm.
Because our population are taking, you know, uh, antacid therapy, and they're taking a lot of supplementations. And, you know, I have friends that, they get sinusitis, they take antibiotics like they're candy.
Wow.
Oh, I got this. Yeah, I just take this and it goes away. I'm like, you can't keep doing that.
Yeah, you're gonna limit the ability for it to fight when it's really time to fight.
You got that right. Every time you go into a built environment, you are leaving tens of thousands of your own microbes there. Like when you
Really?
sat down on your chair, if you get up right now, there's probably of your own microbes, which are special to you.
Whoa.
You're leaving like, I don't know, 30, 40, 50,000 of them just on the chair, right where you are. Just when you're talking, I'm spitting on my keyboard and there are microbes on there. So forensically, theoretically, you could swab, my keyboard, and you could get my spit, and you could say, Alverdy, you were talking to this dude, Mr. Ray, at 9:04 today, you know.
Whoa. I mean,
Theoretically,
those are
yeah,
brand new applications to,
right.
criminal investigations. That's the first thing that
Right.
comes to mind.
And that's exactly right. And he actually, not only talked about that, but sort of pioneered some of the work in that. So the air that we breathe,
Hmm.
the microbes we leave behind in a given built environment. So one of the projects he and I did early on was this hospital microbiome project, which said, when Jack was here, we built this new hospital. And we said, gee, I wonder if the bugs that get you infected when you go into a hospital are there. And they weren't there until humanoids, you and I, started moving in there. The workers, the visitors, then the patients, and they started dropping off their microbes. And they're like, we didn't do an in-depth study showing that the microbes that you leave are the ones that get you infected.
Hmm.
That's more complicated. But we did show that here's this sterile building being built from scratch. And the only time you get microbial contents in there is if human beings or animals like us go in there.
I mean, so we just didn't know until recently the pervasive nature of all of our microbiome residue, fluid. What do you call it? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and it just leaves it behind, and it's uniquely be able to. It's like a fingerprint. You can mark it to us specifically.
That's
That's
right.
pretty. Yeah.
That's pretty impressive, when you think about, well, you need a piece of hair or blood stain or something, to know that that person was there. And let's say that person is smart enough to clean the place up, use gloves and, put a hairnet on and whatever. Well, you're leaving your microbes there, whether you like it or not.
That's great. And so, with your path, going taking a step back, your path, what's really unique about it, in part, there's a lot of unique parts of your path, but you're a surgeon scientist. You're a genuine scientist. You do scientific methodologies and you create new knowledge. from your research and you're also a surgeon, that's a rare combo. It might excite some young people, but it's not so easy to find the right place that allows something like that. Maybe you can talk about how the institutions that you went to help foster this amazing kind of being that you can be, which is a surgeon scientist. Like, that's a great combo, and it's not easily attainable just from every institution.
Yeah. So, I wrote a paper that has been very hard to get published because it's offensive or confrontational to some people, which is, and the title of this paper is Medical Doctors Are Not Scientists. And we study science, we understand science, but we're not scientists. A scientist is held to such level of rigor and reproducibility and evidence-based. And there are doctors here that are not scientists at the University of Chicago, but they examine the literature, and they are like scientists in their review of the literature, and they make their recommendations to their patients. And one such physician here is a man named Adam Sifu, who wrote a book called Medical Reversal. Why is it that cholesterol is bad 1 year? Oh, no, it's okay. Don't eat eggs. Okay, now you can eat eggs. Salt is bad. No, salt is okay. What's up with all this? It's because science is changing. New evidence comes in all the time. And remember, science is not a result. It's a process. It's a process of getting to the truth by understanding what is not falsifiable by repeated experiment. What can't you falsify about this makes it approach truth. I don't know what the hell truth is, but
Yeah.
And we're suffering through that, in our own politics in this nation right now.
Certainly.
What is truth? And so,
yeah, misinformation,
disinformation, misinformation. But the fact of the matter is, when I left Mexico after medical school, I ended up in a couple of institutions where I saw physicians who, ostensibly are supposed to be smart, not acting like skeptical scientists act. And it kind of angered me. It's like, why are you making this decision when you know it's not in the best interest of the patient, or it's not based on evidence that's out there? And that led me to, and this other patient that I had that had an infection, and then I came here and I met with a scientist, James Shapiro, who's a brilliant geneticist, molecular geneticist. And we literally sat down for like 2-3 hours at lunch, drawing on napkins and stuff. And, when you get into the mind of how a scientist thinks, it kind of changes you.
Yeah.
I think you're somebody, Andre, who understands, this, what's it called, the Dunning-Kruger effect, where like
Mm-hmm.
you don't have enough knowledge to know you don't have enough knowledge. Like
Yeah.
you're somebody who wants knowledge, so you know what you know and you know what you don't know.
Yes.
That's kind of the purpose of your show. Is I want to gain more knowledge so I know what I don't know.
Yes.
And I want to communicate that to the public.
Yeah.
Which is
Help
very
them
hard.
understand what they want to. Yeah. Help
Yeah,
them know more.
not
Help us all know.
Yeah, not everybody gets to go to Harvard and Yale and take physics by a Nobel Prize winning physicist to know, shit, I don't know anything.
Right.
Not every, that's like 0.001% of the population.
Yeah.
The rest of us have to navigate through our lives and try to figure out what it is we have the capacity of knowing and can communicate to others, and what we might change in the world to make it a better place to live for everybody.
Yeah.
And, we've had this talk before, but, it's especially for university people like me who are obviously left leaning, it's disquieting and unnerving to watch the political fiasco that we watch, just these people like saying stuff, and it just drives you crazy because in your own heart your job is to base all of your decisions on the most credible available evidence there is.
Yeah.
And if you ask a physicist about something outside of his or her field, they'll say, I don't know. Like, how can you not know? You're the smartest guy in the world. You're at MIT. You should know everything about everything. You go, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
You ask somebody else, like some of these politicians, I won't name them, but you know who I'm talking about. You're like,
we can get some money from them too,
Well, they say, I know more than the 5-star generals.
Oh, my goodness.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? How could you?
It's preposterous. It's like, and I think it's getting worse, with the internet. I'm not sure how that might have impacted things because I was really too young to see the difference before and after the internet per se, AOL online or whatever. But I mean, talk about Google search, Chat GPT. I mean, people are more and more feeling like after they know, right? Like, oh, I know it all now. And so, and I think they're retaining even less than they used to have to because they know it's there. It's like a phone number that, used to remember all your phone numbers because somehow in your brain it knew that it had to remember all those phone numbers. Somehow it just knew. Like, you didn't have to even tell it to remember it. You just had to remember it because you had to get a payphone or hit some cell phone and call the numbers. There was no when you're on the road. And now it's like you can't even remember anyone's phone number close to you just met because somehow, subconsciously, it's in the phone. I don't have to worry about it. Same with perhaps regular information in your day-to-day where you can, suddenly this topic comes up that's, conflicting about a war and everybody's an expert the next day. Or we're going to do superconductivity. And they have a thing come out and everybody gets excited. Now everyone knows everything about superconductivity. And it's like, yeah, you can obviously get into dangerous traps like that as a nation where these experts, some lawyers lost their license for turning in a case that was given by Chat GPT.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they literally presented it and it looked like they say, hey, give a citation for this. ChatGPT gave him a citation. They said, well, back in 18, this was the thing that happened. And they said, that never happened. Where'd you get that from? Did you look that up and do you not actually get real information and where it's stored is about, precedents? And so it's an interesting time for knowledge.
Yeah, I know you're right. But one of the things that's happening, and again, I was talking about teams and team science and stuff like that, is like if you're in the high journals, they say that 80-90% of the studies that come out in these really high impact journals, New England Journal, Nature, Science, Cell, nobody repeats. You know why? Because it took like 10 years for them to get this paper and all the data generated to get published. And like, who in their lab is going to say, I think that Alverdy guy's crazy. I'm going to spend the next 10 years, $5 million chasing all his experiments and proving him wrong. It becomes too hard.
Reproducibility is too expensive.
Right. So like everything you see on Instagram or, TikTok or whatever, you're going to go spend 3 hours of your day looking it up if it's true. There's too much crap out there. You're like, and then the person puts together a video and it looks real and you're not sure. And how do you deconstruct? It's almost like you can't take everything that's, to your point, that's thrown out in the media, in the social media, and verify its truth, which is why, the right hates fact checking. They don't like it. What are you fact checking me for? I'm supposed to fool everybody. Oh dude.
Yeah, it depends on who fact checks. You're going to listen to their fact check? They don't know. It's like they just looked up when it actually said and what happened. But look who it is. You can't trust them. Don't worry about it. It's probably not true. No, it's not a new thing in that broader sense. but it's interesting and pervasive in its new form, I guess.
But the same thing happens at the scientific level. For example, in the microbiome space, there are a lot of self-proclaimed microbiome experts. If you ask me, and I've been asked this, what is it in the microbiome that I should be manipulating? I'm like, I don't know. Like I told you before, it's a work in progress. I have tools to understand it. I'm trying to advance an understanding of a problem. That's what a scientist does. A person in a position of authority, like a medical doctor, who's smart and, has studied science, but is not a scientist, is out there talking about, you know what you need? You need to take these fiber supplements. You'll grow hair, you'll live to be 150, and it's too self-serving. Yeah. And this is the misinformation or disinformation they're throwing out there. Is like, the microbiome, it's important. Look at Alverdy stuff. Okay, you need fiber, you need this, you need coenzyme Q, zinc, molybdenum. You're like, dude, I'm taking 15 pills a day. Am I going to live longer? I just don't want to get prostate cancer or colon cancer or breast cancer, whatever. And they're like, okay, take this and you won't get it. You're like, but it's a doctor, so he or she must know everything, and they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, you talked about the ignorance of experts, not offensively, just the fact that they're ignorant to some things. There's holes in knowledge, and perhaps not leaning on that authority in order to open up a door for new answers.
You got that exactly right. You said that perfectly.
And so you mentioned that doing surgery, unlike science, is somehow like being on a stage. And obviously I'm a filmmaker. I kind of resonate with that idea, but I'm interested to understand what it really means. Like, what do you mean it's on a stage, and the enticing nature of it, how it differs from the science life, and yeah, I guess understanding it through that lens, how does that then frame how you think about the two professions differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in English from England, they call it an operating theater. We call it an operating room in the United States.
They do call it operating theater.
It's a theater.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that in that theater, remember, old pictures where you got the surgeon operating and there's a whole audience of people where there's, sitting in tiers of chairs,
Yes.
That was.
I've seen it in recently, and there was a movie recently. I don't know if you saw it. Poor Things.
No, I didn't see Poor Things, but I saw The Nick. Have you seen The Nick on Netflix?
No, I haven't seen The Nick.
Oh, watch The Nick. It's
is
really,
it K-N-I-C-K?
It's K-N-I-C-K. I think it was like the first like Bellevue Hospital in New York, but it's turn of the century, and the head surgeon. I don't want to ruin the series for you, but
okay, it's a whole series.
You watch the first episode, you'll be hooked. It's on Cinemax or something. I think you have to pay for. I don't have Cinemax, but yeah, there you go. There's the operating theater. That's it.
I see.
And so that's
why
it
really was a theater at the. You could literally go and see surgeries.
So imagine that you're really smart. You've worked your butt off. You got through. You are now in a position to get to do surgery. You've got a medical license. You're revered by your peers. You got all the chits, the board certification and everything. And now you've got medical students, residents, fellows, nurses, and they're all cheering you on to do something that you have been well trained to do. It's a manual task, and you could do it. It becomes very seductive because, again, you have a group cheering. Remember, most of us are kind of nerdy bookworms. We'll never be Michael Jordan. We're never going to be throwing, we're never going to be Tiger Woods. We're never going to, we don't have that kind of talent. We don't have that kind of where, people are screaming every time you hit a ball or throw a ball or something, right?
Right.
So, but this is the theater that we get to be in because we were able to get into those schools, pass those tests. You know what I mean? And so it is that's the Nick. That's him.
Yeah,
that's the protagonist. That's the protagonist.
Clive Owen. Gotta
Clive
love it.
Owen, yeah. When you
So I'll
see
definitely.
when you see the first episode, you'll be done. It's in a
Okay.
theater like this, and it's a surgeon, not him, trying to do the first cesarean section in a woman who's giving birth. And I won't destroy the story for you, but the baby dies and the patient dies,
Oh
and
my goodness.
they're all watching, and this is the first one ever. And
Oh
I
my
won't
goodness.
and I won't tell you what happens after that. You
Yeah,
won't.
that seems. That's funny you say. I won't ruin it, but
Maybe I
they
did
both
ruin it
die.
already.
They both die.
Maybe I ruined it. But what
Yeah, no, it's
happens
fine.
after
I'll
is
watch
like
it.
shocking. What happens after, and just think of the I mean, I golf, and I shoot in the high 90s and low 90s. Sometimes I break 90. But
Okay.
I mean, imagine being able to play like Tiger Woods.
Mhm.
Imagine it for a moment. And these people are cheering you, and you're hitting these shots that are just impossible. And the
Yeah.
crowd is going nuts. I mean, what a feeling that must be for him,
Right.
right? Or
Yeah.
any great sports star or anybody with that level of talent so there's some sort of, what's the word, celebrity addiction, celebrity, you can see this with even in Hollywood where these people get old and it's like, get out of the way, let somebody else, get in there, but
Yeah.
they're almost addicted. So one of the things an internist here told me, he says, the problems with surgeons is they're addicted to surgery. And,
That's interesting. Yeah.
it's hard, look at who's the guy, Tom Brady.
Yeah.
That dude ruined his marriage. You know, he got
He
kids and
did.
everything because the stardom of I can just imagine being that quarterback, throwing that thing, crowd going, that's got to be like a drug.
It has to be. Yes. Yeah. I mean the work of the emotions and it has to be searing in there. I mean
And that,
dopamine
that,
crazy and
that guy
yeah.
could not, I mean, I wouldn't want to stop if I were him. The guy's
Hey,
great.
I still got it. What do you want me to do? But what do we do, honey? I still
Yeah.
have it.
Yeah, exactly. And I see this here because surgeons won't retire because they enjoy what they're doing. And they've gotten so good at it that nothing else gives them meaning.
Wow.
Nothing gives them that drug effect. Nothing triggers that, whatever that is, dopamine or whatever the hell that crap is. Like being in the theater.
And so, are there a lot of people watching? Not a lot, not like it used to be, but people are still watching your moves for the success of the surgery when you lead it.
That's exactly right. And when I was doing robotic surgery, which I did a lot of, I'm sitting on a robot, I got the camera there, I got people at the bed. It was a lot of fun.
I
And
bet.
and you can imagine flying a plane. How cool would that be? You're the
Super fun. I
pilot.
want to do that.
Those dudes have to quit at six, or women and men have to quit at 60. I think it's mandatory retirement for a pilot.
Whoa. I didn't know this.
Yeah. You can look that up.
I have never seen a 7-year-old pilot though, and I definitely would be kind of looking twice if I did. Say, wait a minute, hold on.
Although that dude, that movie Sully, where Tom Hanks was the, see
Yeah,
that
Sully.
movie? They said, only a 60-year-old, and I guess he was an army pilot at some point, could have
Okay.
landed that thing in the Hudson River. So there's something about experience and wisdom
Yeah, for
and
sure.
knowledge that takes over. Like a pilot doesn't know every wire that's hooked to the motherboard and every flap. But man, and physicists don't understand turbulence. But man, when it comes to managing that plane or that turbulence or that landing, you want that experienced pilot in there.
Yeah.
The surgeon might not know every molecule and every bacteria and every microbiome and every gene that's going. But man, when something bad happens, you want that old dude in there who's got experience, and so,
Yeah.
that's why there's anti-ageism in all fields. But at some point, and we're dealing that with the president, the
Yeah.
Biden, and the other.
Biden. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah. He
certain
didn't want to
point
go.
where it's a certain point where it's like Time to
Yeah.
quit.
It is. Yeah. I mean, Kentucky, what's his, Mitch McConnell. That was just, I mean, and, don't try to make me act like I didn't see it, because I see it. We see it. Let's just all say we see it and then move on.
Yeah.
That's why I like, in an odd way. I mean, Mitt Romney, he said,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm leaving. All right, that's it." Quentin Tarantino says after 10, I'm going to be done with it. Okay, I've done enough. My time. I'm going to move on to writing books. You got to hope that, people want to make room for that next. Secession is such a important part of a successful dynasty, nation, whatever you want to call it, or to propel forward in the future. I get that's one big issue with Russia. No successor, no prepping of succession. So like, no one even has the skill set. I think Navalny had a little bit of it, and now he's gone. And so it was just like, you don't even let other people start to prepare for it. I mean, they did move Biden, even though it was such a push and a struggle. And so how does that, I guess, that stage mentality make surgery, I guess, different from science in a way? I guess it's alluring. It puts them in a different,
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is really critical here. And I think this is something I think about a lot about at my age, which is, when all you do, when you're a surgeon and you've worked so hard to get to learn this skill and you know it and it's really good and you can do it and you can do it fast and better than anybody, it gives you such meaning in your life that you don't want to get off the stage. And you're like, how come there are not more surgeon scientists like me? And my point is that it's hard to get off the stage, and the operating theater is very seductive. Just like
you can write a TV show, man. That's a show right there.
Tom Brady does not want to give it up. He loves it too much. And I know surgeons that are 75, 80 years old, and they're still operating because it gives, and they're good. The patients are doing fine. Mm-hmm. But to your point, sometimes you just got to get out of the way and let the young people. I went golfing last week. I was in North Carolina with my son-in-law, who's, 35 years old. And, he was telling me, he said, it's a problem in his business. He's in IT, where you can see that the older generation has accumulated a lot of wealth and can stop what they're doing. They don't want to.
Mm-mm.
It's just too much fun. You look at these Warren Buffetts and these other people. It's like, it's about this idea, when you talk about why be a scientist and how come there are not enough surgeon scientists and people worry about it, it's because, I'm going to say this, it's because the theater and the rush is so seductive that you don't want to do anything else.
Yeah.
And, and that's a problem. And there's a lot of problems to be solved in surgery. We've done well up to this point, but they're not all mechanical.
Yeah. Some of them are scientific.
Some are scientific, and we need to dive into that. And I'm nothing special. I just was inspired to do it by people that inspired me to do it.
And you had saw, I mean, we talked backing on when it first started, you saw a sort of deference to authority in the physicians that you were encountering when you were a medical student and younger in your career, and it wasn't scientific. But then you had the opportunity, I heard that you were going back and forth between your scientific education and your medical education. And maybe you can talk about what that was like and what that opportunity was like.
Yeah, when I was a second year resident, my program director, the head of the general surgery program, said to me, this sounds immodest, but he said, you're too smart to just finish in surgery, just go through. He says, I want you to spend some time in the laboratory. And he sent me to University of California, San Francisco to do basic research. He said, you can go there or Harvard. And I picked California.
For the weather?
And because the weather was nicer, yeah. And he and I came home to my wife and I go, we have to go to California for, some time. And she said, why? I said, I'm not sure if he said I was smart or I'm a smart ass. I'm like, but, but I went there and you get, I saw there the most amazing surgeon scientists who inspire you
Hmm.
to be like them, so I guess, we talk about role models and mentors and all that other stuff. When you see somebody, not everybody's, you would say, why you aren't a lot of surgeons similarly exposed to those inspirational figures? And the answer is yes. So why did you decide they're inspiring to you and the other one didn't?
Yeah. It's like your role models, you don't choose them, they choose you.
Right. So I always say this, two people can go to the opera and listen to the opera. One can cry and the other one could fall asleep. And don't ask me what that is. But
Yeah.
my mother
And
would
so,
drag me to the opera all the time when I was a kid.
really?
My dad would fall asleep and I would sit there like, just mesmerized how beautiful it was. And, she sang opera and my dad would be snoring away on the left side. It's like, don't ask me. I don't know why I'm like this.
I mean, so I don't know how much time you got left. I don't want to, I want to
I
get
got
to
about
some questions.
No, I got about at 10:15 I have to meet some people.
Okay, great, great. Okay, so
Yeah, no,
I'll
I think this was good. I think we got most of sort of I think correct me if I'm wrong, but you wanted to not only understand my story, but a little bit of my character. You want to bring out my character.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And I think we got a lot of that for sure. You're
Yeah.
certainly a great character. And you can balance that, eccentric, exciting, funny with the, grounded and respectful. And I don't know what's the word I'm looking for,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's,
you have to be, to become a surgeon, you have to be a serious person. To become a pilot, you have to be a serious person. To become a successful business person, you have to be serious. A successful TV producer, you have to have a serious side to you. Can't all be fun and games. And the same thing is with science. You have to be serious about what you're doing. You have to get grants. You have to train people. You have to do experiments that get published in high impact journals, so you get the second grant. I mean, it's not something that you do for fun or part time.
yeah,
And so what inspires somebody to do both? Be an actor and a director or a producer and an actor. It's hard to understand, but it happens all the time.
yeah. And
And
so, oh, so,
I was going to say one thing that I think about a
mhm,
lot in my old age is how brilliant people. I think I sent you that Herbie Hancock, Miles Davis thing. That
mhm,
that thing. How people can go to the best schools like Juilliard or Peabody or Berkeley School of Music, and it doesn't mean just because you went there that you can bang out great songs. I mean, Taylor Swift never finished high school. I think Michael Jackson was homeschooled. The Beatles, they weren't trained musicians and they bang out all these songs. So creativity and that ability to produce something unusual or new knowledge in the field is not something that can just be trained. But if you want to be like a top neurosurgeon, you go to a really good medical school so you can get in a really good training program so that you can really get a good fellowship and take a position in a really prestigious medical center. It's a different thing. It's sort of like a more linear, right? If
yeah,
you do these things, you can get there. But if you want to be Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan or I don't know, Tom Brady, you can't just say I went to these schools and now I'm going to be the top quarterback for the New England Patriots. No, you're not.
yeah,
Or I'm gonna shoot. I mean, I think it was Michael Jordan's high school coach told him, "You're nothing. You suck. You're no good." you
yeah.
know,
There is no linear path. There is
there's no
no,
linear path and there's no
yeah, there's
formula.
no formula. especially when the times change. I feel like, if there was a formula, it's gone tomorrow. Like whatever the blueprint was, you can maybe get a meta blueprint from a bunch of different stories and try to chart a path, but that's maybe the best bet you got for a map. But like oftentimes it's only when you're truly out there on the edge, on the voyage, that you find that leaf when you're about to drown that carries you to the place that you want to be. And you couldn't have found that without going through it and actually being there, right? You can't find it from, I don't know, from your perch or your ivy loft or whatever, your ivy tower. You have to go out there and actually go do it. And you took quite a path to where you are.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no, that's really intriguing. I don't know if there's anything, I guess, is there anything else that you want to leave the audience with? You're here on National Champion Radio. We really appreciate everything you've done in your career, the focus on excellence, the obsession of what it takes to get to where you are. Dedication and obsession, and it shouldn't go undermined. So we're trying to make Tiger Woods out of John Alverdy's. I mean, that's really our job. I mean, not quite Tiger, but like, we want to certainly inspire young people to take these paths, and to say, wow, I can be revered or at least appreciated and seen by being elite in something that's tremendously useful. And so that's a big part of what we're trying to do here is commend that and put that on a stage. And we got a lot of different plans for the future we should talk about later. But I want to take over and make something bigger than the Oscars is what we're working on, an award show, bringing you all together. But anyway, any last words before we go offline and wrap it up?
Just thank you very much. It's been a pleasure and an honor to talk to you and be on this show. And I wish you all the success. And, it's very important. I think this is one of your goals, is to communicate this in an understandable way. And you hit the nail on the head when you said inspire people, because, we're told a lot that we can't do something. And the fact of the matter is we can,
Okay.
and there's so many ways to get there. My path has certainly not been straight and linear, and
we didn't even talk about medical school in Mexico. We can talk about that next time.
That's a whole nother story, but it goes to show you that you can achieve excellence, but you have to be serious and, to use your word, obsessed with something that is going to get you there. And the more sort of focus and discipline and obsession you have about something that is going to be important to the world, the more successful you are. And I think that's what you're trying to communicate. And so congratulations. Good talking to you.
All right.
Hope to see you again.